Great. Great. Well, again, thanks everybody for showing up for the effective lobbying techniques for citizens. Um, we're going to be introducing the style that we use at Citizens Climate Lobby, and we really want to thank Families for a Livable Climate for sponsoring it, and Winona Rachel for helping out with the chat tonight. So these techniques are can be used in so many different situations, not just lobbying, but it's also a way to approach elected officials anywhere, as well as community leaders. And so we hope that you will make your voices even more powerful after attending this workshop. So I'm Kristen Walzer, and I've been lobbying with Citizens Climate Lobby since 2013. I retired as a teacher after 32 years of working with people with disabilities. And I actually did a little bit of lobbying with the teachers union, but I find it incredibly empowering and fun.
And I'm Mary Mulcair Jones. I have been volunteering with Citizens Climate Lobby since around 2018. I have a background in teaching and counseling, and these days I spend a lot of my time chasing after grandkids. I really appreciate CCL for making lobbying so accessible for regular people like us. And we're also grateful to have Winona Rachel with us watching the chat and tracking your questions and comments. Winona works as a field organizer for Families for a Livable Climate. And speaking of the chat, let's make sure everyone is clear on how to use it. Go ahead and put your name and where you're from in the chat. You, you should find the chat listed along the bottom menu of your screen. And you can let Winona know if you're having any troubles, any tech troubles, just let Winona know. Thank you. Whoa. I am sorry. Okay.
Think you're going the wrong way
I
there on
am
the
going the wrong way. So let me,
do a U-turn.
there we go.
There you go. Oh, now one more. You got raise your hand is our next one. There
Okay,
you
there
go.
we go. Now we're back on track. So we'd like to know just a little bit about you and your experience with being a citizen advocate. Um, so if you could use the chat to answer these questions and maybe give a couple of details if your answer is yes. Have any of you called or emailed a legislator about a policy? Has anyone written an op-ed or a letter to the editor about policy? And lastly, has anyone lobbied an elected official? Winona, what are you seeing in the chat?
Sounds like some folks are saying yes, they have. Not a lot of folks have written op-eds, but seems like a handful of folks have called or spoken directly to a legislator.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you.
So, from this workshop tonight, we hope you will understand CCL's general principles of building a respectful and relationship with an elected official. We're going to go over our planning process that's at the heart of the meeting, and also go over some communication skills that are are really important. And then we'll do a demo of a lobby meeting with a role play with Mary and I, and wrap it up. We realize that we realized when we were planning that there really wasn't enough time to do the mock lobby meeting for all of you. And plus, the session just started and we didn't have access to the draft bills until Monday. So we're going to arrange another time to do a mock lobby meeting in February if people want to actually practice the skills a lot more. Mary? Yeah.
So a little background on Citizens Climate Lobby. It is a nonprofit, nonpartisan grassroots advocacy organization focused on federal legislation for climate change solutions. And recently we have branched out a bit to collaborate on some local and state solutions as well. There are two parts to our mission, you can see there. First, to create the political will for fair and effective solutions, and to empower people to have breakthroughs in their own, in their personal and political power. We really emphasize educating communities as well as people with influence in the community about our proposed solutions so that we can in turn influence our members of Congress.
So, direct lobbying in person or with our monthly actions for our members to call or email is just one way to create political will. Uh, but there are a lot of other ways that you can see here. For instance, we use social and print media. Our volunteers do educational outreach in the community and meet with community leaders. And there are a lot of us. We have 230,000 members worldwide, including 5 chapters in Montana. And our U.S. volunteers held 2,166 uh, meetings with members of Congress in the 118th Congress. So we're pretty busy. So now Mary's going to tell you a story that illustrates how our methodology gets results and how some of those meetings are kind of unconventional.
This story starts in 2017. That was the year Utah's John Curtis first came to Congress. And when members of the CCL area chapter, what happened?
Don't worry, you can keep talking. We'll get that fixed.
Okay. I lost my slides.
You'll
You
need
can
to
just
share again.
share them again, Mary. Yeah.
There we go. That's better.
Oops.
So anyway, that 2017 was when the CCL area chapters first met John Curtis with him and his staff in DC during our June lobby days. And then they continued to meet every year after that. By the way, these in-person meetings are the traditional way we build relationships with members of Congress. And then in between those annual meetings in DC, we stay in touch either through emails or home visits. So back to the story, describing his relationship with the chapter at a CCL conference some years later, Representative Curtis said he had been impressed with the level of knowledge and commitment the CCL folks had and how respectful they were in their communications. It made him want to learn more and, as he said, do better. And do better he did. In 2021, Curtis started the Conservative Climate Caucus in the House, which as of 2024 had 87 members. In 2022, after 5 years of relationship building, Bill Barron on the left and other members of the Salt Lake chapter felt comfortable inviting Curtis on the right, under the right arrow, on a hike in the Wasatch Range He accepted and went on an 8-hour hike with the group. And it is an annual tradition, the summer hike with John Curtis. This past December, newly elected as Utah's junior senator, Curtis spoke at our CCL virtual national conference. He credited CCL for his transformation from being uncomfortable even talking about climate change or climate to being a climate leader in Congress. And he mentioned his appreciation that CCL members never chastised him as he was on the learning curve, but always offered him suggestions and praised the small steps he took.
So you will probably see some of these core values from Mary's story. Um, we focus on what we're for, what solutions are out there, not what we're against. When we see things we're against or hear them, we try to put them to the side for the time being or lean in with curiosity to learn about what others are thinking. And then appreciation, respect are key to everything we do. Celebrate progress, even if it's smaller than we might like or slower. And then we work on both sides of the aisle to develop bipartisan policies and bills. Uh, so, so it's not easy. It's not easy to do this, and a lot of groups tend to kind of go on the attack at some point, and they have success too. But we feel that nothing can really get past Congress, especially a divided Congress, if you don't have both sides on board. You just can't get into law and can't do all the good you want it to do. So, and it also can get overturned easily if the political tide turns. So, and then this approach also kind of has the added benefit of when you do cultivate one legislator and really get them going, they can take over the job of influencing the other people of their party.
This style of lobbying can be effective at any level of government, as it's based on the premise that legislators are people too. A good analogy is dating. If you storm in and do all the talking, you're probably not going to get a second date. Your marriage proposal on the first date is also unlikely to get a positive response. Relationships can be powerful, but it does take time and effort to build them.
So, providing safety and support for legislators changing is key. And one way to do that is to build trust. If we go into a meeting, we make sure we maintain confidentiality so they don't feel like you're going to be spilling the beans and they won't want to meet with you again. You want to feel like you're a resource for them and will support whatever they need. The other thing that we've kind of been bringing up is you have to stay positive in all of our interactions, not only in the meeting, but in public, and especially when we're in the press. Legislators watch the press really closely, and so they know when somebody has said something bad about them, and they also know when people praise them. So we have heard directly from offices that they know that we praise them on certain occasions. So it really does get through to them. And they also might not feel safe if their base doesn't, if they think their base won't like the bill or the policy that you're bringing up, or if their donors don't like it, or their influencers won't like it. So we need to find out what they need to happen in district so that they'll feel comfortable moving forward. So they're kind of behind their base instead of in front of their base and leading. And as we said before, recognizing their small successes is a big support for them to change.
Preparation is essential. It's helpful to have some background about your legislators. You can visit their official websites to get insight about their interests, their positions, their previous votes. And as you're researching, look for common ground or mutual areas of interest and something you can appreciate about them. It's important to research your ask, what you're asking the legislator to do. So you want to collect supporting materials, maybe try to find community leaders or other organizations that are willing to endorse or support your ask. You want to develop your story or your introduction about why you care about the ask. Try to connect your personal story to a mutual value that you have identified. It might be health, it might be economics, freedom, individual initiative. Legislators are busy people and they might remember your story when they don't remember the facts that you presented. You want to make a list of open-ended questions beforehand that you can have ready for the meeting. And we're going to talk about open-ended questions a little bit more. If more than one person is attending, decide on meeting roles and practice ahead of time. Practice out loud. Get your supporting materials or your endorsements printed so that you can leave them with the legislator, or you might have the links that you offer to email to the legislator.
So now that you prepared, well, even before you prepare, you need to possibly schedule your meeting. And they should be open to meeting with you, especially if you're a constituent. Um, but they are busy. So we suggest you start with an email and then move on to maybe leaving them a message at the Capitol saying, "Hey, we asked you for a meeting. Check your email," kind of thing. Um, and you can go to ledgemontana.gov. It's a little squirrely, but you have to find, if you don't know your district, which, they did change, and then get your legislator. They have all the contact info. Um, but in the email, you're going to tell them you're a constituent because that's important. Start with an appreciation if you have one. Briefly say what you want to discuss. And suggest a couple of different times maybe. It may be difficult to find times and a place that might be quiet enough to meet. And then definitely if you do have a group going, make sure you tell them who's coming. They don't want to be surprised. And it's probably not too practical to meet with them in the state legislature when they're home on break. That's pretty busy for them probably, or they need to relax. So, and it depends how far away you live from them. They live uh, from Helena probably makes a difference. Now
And
we're
you
going to talk about
and you can,
what to do in the meeting.
Kristen, you can schedule a virtual meeting as well.
Ah, yes, good point.
In the meeting, you want to express the principle of respect. This includes respect for their time by being early, asking how much time they have for the meeting, and then sticking to that ending time. Your meeting's probably going to be short, so address one topic only. Keep it simple. They will have limited bandwidth during the legislative session. This is not a debate or a time to lecture. You want to listen and find out what their concerns and priorities are by asking open-ended questions. This will help you shape your future communication with them. Be aware of what's going on, the time, their body language, what words they use. If you can, use the language you hear them using or that you found in your research. For example, you might want to say clean energy instead of renewable energy.
So, do we have any questions so far in the chat about our meeting, uh, how we run the meeting, or anything at all
Anything
so
we've
far?
covered so far.
Any comments?
I'm
What,
not seeing any comments or questions in the chat right now.
okay, well,
Okay,
we're going to stop for questions periodically. So if you do have questions as we go along, please put them in the chat.
as
Thomas,
you
did
think of
you
them.
put your hand up with a question?
Oh, he's typing.
Oh, yes. Thomas has asked, do we lobby only Republicans or Democrats?
So that's a great question. We really CCL will lobbies every single person in Congress if we can. We will try to make schedule our meetings in advance, and there's 435 people to meet with, and we try to do get every single meeting we can. And again, Citizens Climate Lobby will meet with anybody, but you really want to meet with um, your legislator. I mean, if your legislator is a Republican, they have more reason to listen to you because you're a voter.
Yeah,
So,
you just,
and Democrats too. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
well, you want to find out what your district is and find out who your elected officials are in that district and meet with them. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other, any others? Okay, well, we're gonna go on.
Michael, did you have a question?
Sorry.
We have
Yes, I'm
one
trying
more
to type it
question
out.
here.
Um, do you want me to type it or?
You can just
Oh,
say
fine.
it.
So yeah, both of my legislators, Senate and House, are really well aligned with my climate goals and what I would be advocating for. I think if I were to meet with them, they would say, yeah, we agree. And it doesn't even almost need to happen. Um, and the folks that I really feel like I want to connect with and shift are not, I'm not a constituent of them. Do you have thoughts about that?
Well, when we would meet with Senator Tester, we would try to he tried to be middle of the road, but we would try to see what his constituents would want to know. So if, does that make sense? So we would say, well, we use this tactic or this rationale with Republicans, and you might. We don't really say you would like to do this too, but we kind of frame things in a way that he could take what we say and say it to someone else. Does that make sense? So we're trying to give them the tools to work in a bipartisan way. We'll find bills that they could maybe amend or that they could and who can they work with on the other side of the aisle and kind of strategize how you could do that.
So you're kind of
Um,
bringing them in on this whole strategy of how to find common ground with legislators across the aisle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that you can't. I mean, actually, we at Citizens Climate Lobby are working a little bit with Gary Perry out of Colstrip, and he wrote a endorsement letter for a bill we were working on federally. And I'm not a constituent, and then I went out to their annual energy open and met him and hung out with him, and so if you're going to develop a relationship with somebody, I mean, I made a point to do that. So, And then another CCL member met with him at mm, the Montana, uh, the commissioners, they, their group of county commissioners. And so that's, I know it's really, you do really want to work across the aisle. So that's beautiful, Michael.
You get to be creative. Okay, we're going to move on to the ask.
Okay. So the ask is basically it describes what action you want the legislator to take. So like co-sponsoring a bill or holding a hearing or there's putting in a bill. So for this workshop, we're using a purely hypothetical ask about a bill that was just introduced on Monday. And so I've not reviewed this very much, and we're just using it as a vehicle to discuss communication skills. But whenever if you're going to make your own ask, that's on the next slide. But organizations that you may be affiliated with will give you an ask, and you're going to want to study that before you go and meet with somebody, and that will have all the supporting information. So MEIC, Northern Plains, MREA, Sierra Club, all of them they have days in Helena and will have their asks there for you to look at.
When presenting the ask, CCL usually sends a one-pager on the ask before we meet with the office, but don't assume they have had time to read it. So during the meeting, we ask if they're familiar with the bill or topic, or if they would like to hear our brief summary. In the summary, we cover the problem, the solution, and why our legislator might like it. What rationale might work for your legislator based on your research?
Okay, so here's our ask for tonight. It's amend the energy planning bill, HB 55, to include language that would expand the transmission grid in an efficient manner. And so the problem right now is that utilities are building unnecessary local transmission due to the fact that they rely on capital expenditure incentives, like getting money to build, getting money to build distribution lines. And there is also a little regional planning going on in the West, so that's another problem. And then there's a gap in the local project oversight from national, regional, and state agencies. So nobody's really looking at what they're doing on a local level in terms of planning which distribution lines to do. And so it kind of means that they might do a little bit more so they could get a little bit more money. So next, the other part of the ask is that what can you do about that? So our solution is we got it from Rocky Mountain Institute. Increase regional transmission planning, increase oversight of local transmission projects, and create an electric transmission authority. And there's more too, but we don't even think that we could get our legislator to agree to all these. So you'd probably want to pick and choose from your research which one you really wanted to focus on, or you could just put it out there and then he might end up just saying, "Oh, let's agree to study it." That's usually what happens when you get kicked down the road. So that's but you have some ideas for solutions. And then the rationale would be, again, this is a fun part of figuring out common ground and figuring out what that you think that they would like about the bill, but you never know until you ask questions. Because you might think we had a situation where it was a veteran legislator was a veteran. We thought they'd be interested in military affairs, and they were totally, their priority was completely different. So we have assumptions, and we got to get rid of them. So now Mary's gonna describe the meeting outline.
Just like a good story, a lobby meeting includes a beginning, a middle, and an end. The actual meeting might not exactly follow this format, but it will help you keep the meeting on track if you have this outline in mind. And we're going to go through each of these sections and break them down a little bit. These elements work no matter how many people are in the meeting. With CCL, we usually have 5 people for our congressional meetings, but one person can do this as well.
So in the beginning of the meeting, we thank them. We ask them how much time they have, because that will govern what you do during your meeting. You'll introduce yourself if you have if you made that story up, a real brief, pithy thing that relates to your ask. You might put it in there. Give an appreciation, a specific one for something, anything you really, really do appreciate for that they've done. You state the purpose of your organization if you're with an organization, and you deliver materials and you state your ask right up at the front. And the thing with this is if you have a lot of people, you would maybe one person would do the appreciation, somebody else would state the purpose, somebody else would deliver. So you can split it all up, or else if you're the only one, you try to hit most of those, depending on how much time you have.
In the middle, we listen deeply and ask questions to learn more about the legislators' values, perspectives, and priorities. After we finish going over the meeting outline, we're going to cover some of these specific communication skills you can use during the meeting.
So the end of the meeting, again, you're tracking the time, so you're your own timekeeper. We usually have somebody separate doing that, but and then you announce how much time you have left. Like if it's a 10-minute meeting, you say 1 minute, or we have one more minute or 2 more minutes. And then give a quick summary if you can, and list out the tasks that they're supposed to do and that you're supposed to do, that you agreed on. And then leave the materials they requested if you brought some, ask for a photo, and then if you are so inclined, and then thank them again.
So the meeting's over, but you're not quite done. You want to debrief with your group, or if you're on your own, write down some notes. Send a thank you note for the meeting, and then be immediate about following up on requests from the legislator for more information or whatever it might be. So, any questions on the meeting outline?
Well, Angie had that in from before. It could be an opportunity to ask the legislator how we could help them, which is definitely in the cards for sure. We want to be a resource.
Yes,
Really good.
that's a very good point.
Thomas is
What's
asking, what is the average length of a meeting?
We know more about what happens on a federal level, so usually you get 30 minutes, generally. The staff have multiple meetings in a day. And so that's why the stories pop in and you want to make yourself known. But if with a good meeting, it can last over an hour, which is super, super fun. And it used to, I think, I don't, for instance, again with Tester, we used to get much longer meetings and almost always get a face-to-face. And then towards the end of when he started getting higher up in the hierarchy and more busy, a little bit less often. But um, for the state, for like I said, 10 minutes for a meeting during the session. I mean, if you could meet for a beer, that might be nice. But um, I I'm not as up on what's available in terms of time. When we did at the state level, I know when we lobbied with the uh, MFT, AFTM, well, what teachers, we had a little. It seemed like we had 20 minutes, maybe 25. But again, it's so yeah, they have 4,000 bills going by in that session. I just don't know how they do it. So. But what you can do is in your email you can say you can ask, or if they say yeah you can do it, and you get back and confirm, you can say, do you know how long we might have for this meeting? That's really good information to have.
Okay,
There's
quick.
there's another question in the chat too, asking if you should first have a discussion with their staff.
So staff, so on a federal level, you probably are only going to meet with staff. It's not super until you start getting to know the staff, then they'll be like, okay, yeah, we're going to put you through to the congressperson. But I don't think I don't think there's really too much. I don't think people at the state level have staff, to be honest. Um, so
Kristen,
I don't. Do they? I mean, they have staff, but they're kind of like writing bills and
sorry,
I,
Kristen,
I
I'm just gonna jump in with a time check. It's 7:10.
oh, okay. Oh boy, and we haven't done. Oh, we want to get to our. Okay, I
All
think we're
right.
pretty close to getting to that. So,
Um, all right, we're gonna move on to the communication skills. A little background, at CCL, we base our policies and approach on science, including social science. For lobbying, we use techniques from a counseling approach called motivational interviewing that was initially designed to encourage people with addiction to change their behavior. The goal is to help people identify the reasons why they want to change by bringing their own motivations or incentives for change to the forefront in the context of the conversation. In lobbying, this means finding the reason or rationale for a bill that a legislator can agree with and bringing that to the forefront of the conversation. Motivational interviewing has 30 years of research across many fields and more than 1,000 studies demonstrating its effectiveness. So we're going to go over 5 communication skills. Chris and I do a short role play for each of them. And then if you want, you can try to put uh, a version in the chat, although we are running a little behind time, so we'll see how that goes.
okay. So we remember the ask for tonight is to amend the energy planning bill HB 55 to include language that would help expand the transmission grid in an efficient manner. So the first skill is to affirm their concern or effort. So we want to appreciate them. Just this is another appreciation thing that they took the effort to ask this question or tell us a concern or make the effort to meet with us. So we're affirming them right from the get-go. Um, and I'm going to play the lobbyist, and Mary's going to be the legislator. Are you familiar with the issue of utilities possibly overbuilding local transmission and passing on the extra cost to their customers?
No, I sure haven't heard about that really at all till I saw it in your email. What's it about?
Well, thank you for being open for discussing it about it. I'm glad you're interested. So that was a simple affirmation. Just even before I answer the question, I'm just like thanking them for asking the question. So can you think of other ways that people could say, thank you for being here. Thank you for if you want to type it in the chat and
Or you can just say it out loud if you have an idea. We got any responses, Winona?
One person said, as an example, I know you're very busy. Thanks for taking the time.
That's great. You could say, I'm so glad you shared that. Great question. I'm glad you asked. I appreciate you. Something like that. But yeah, that's a great one.
oh, oops.
Go ahead.
Um,
Go ahead.
okay. So what they say is like gold. So we really want to hear what they think. And once you give the legislator a little information, then you can ask an open-ended question and get, what do you think so far, or what do you like about that? And just get their what do they think? So after they respond, you can either ask for more information or you can say, can you tell me more? And just keep on a roll of digging into what they think. Or you can go to the next skill that we're going to do. But so it looks like this. Okay, I'm the lobbyist. I've learned that utilities around the country are spending resources on smaller transmission projects that may not be needed instead of planning and coordinating with their to make their small private projects fit with regional projects. When they build unnecessary projects, they're passing extra costs to consumers. Um,
Um,
what do you think about that?
do you know if Northwestern is doing this?
That is a great question. I'm not sure because it's not easy to get that information. What can you think of a way we could find that out?
Well, I wonder if the Public Service Commission would have that information.
So that's a great idea. And then is there anybody else? And blah, 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 blah. So can you guys think of any question, make up some open-ended questions based on that little blurb? Well, the good one that it's right there is can you tell me more about that? That's always good. Um, we're going to get into a lot more in the role play. What do you like about it is a really nice one. Okay, Mary.
All right, well, the next skill is reflect and confirm. So we've heard a little bit from him. Now we want to confirm that what we heard it correctly, or we understood what he was saying by reflecting back and confirming what we think we heard him say. Okay, lobbyist, Kristen.
It sounds like you'd like to know if Northwestern is doing this before actually acting on my request.
Yeah, I would like to know that.
So
So we got that confirmed that is a concern he has. Um, okay.
it's a real skill doing that. You, if you guys have done that, I'm sure you have, but so next one is name and confirm their values. So now we want to see behind what they say. to see the value that is behind it. So if they, so the legislator said he wanted to know if Northwestern's spending more money than they need to. What do you think are the values behind that statement? Do you guys want to see if you can come up with some? Well, let me just talk about these values. So, these are values from a book called The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, and he's talking about um, ones that are kind of values that are often more associated with conservatives, like purity, cleanliness, sanctity, liberty, self-reliance, and respect for authority. And then liberals are more, and conservatives care about care and preventing harm and fairness and community, but those last three are really more of a liberal value. Um,
We had someone in the chat say maybe he cares about knowledge or being fully informed before acting.
yes, so he values good information, knowledge. Yeah,
Also,
evidence-based.
evidence-based policy.
Nice, nice. I was thinking that he might really value accountability. Um, and he wants to know if, maybe are they being accountable? I don't know. So that seemed to be one that I thought of. And then fairness, like um, Winona said. And see, once you have that, when you have that value behind that decision-making process of, oh, I do I want to put this in the bill that something about accountability because that's one of my values, it kind of makes it have more weight, his decision that he's going to make, if his decisions have these values behind it. Okay, Mary.
So now you've identified a value and you can confirm it, and then you want to tell them that you share or respect that value. So you could simply say, something like, I agree, accountability is really important. If accountability is the value that we have identified. Kristen.
Okay, so in general, we like to, before we share our perspective, we want to make sure they want to hear it. So we ask permission to share. Would you like to hear what I discovered about that? Or I read an article about that. Would you like me to share that with you? And then they respond of yes or no, so you don't want to put information on them that they don't want. So do you guys have a way you might be able to fit that in a sentence? Like, like I'm glad you're interested in transmission. Would you like to hear about this report from Rocky Mountain Institute? All right, so let's have some questions. I think we have a
Uh,
couple of them.
yeah, there was a couple in the chat earlier that didn't get answered. One of which was, can you provide an example of an effective personal story?
I mean, people do workshops for whole days on how to do that. So that we didn't go into that, but it's really valuable. And it's nice to do maybe something that it relates to transmission in this case, which might be, well, we had an outage when and my mother couldn't get
Kristen?
her
Oh,
uh,
well, or
liability
my
or
freezer
affordability.
full of food
What was that?
thawed. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there you go.
We had one more question that was, since time is a limiting factor, would you ever recommend inviting or meeting with two or three like-minded legislators at a time?
That sounds like fun.
It'd be great if
I
we had a constituent for each of them. That would be super. Yeah.
Especially if they're from the same party, maybe, but I mean, if they weren't and they came, that would be dynamite.
Okay, good questions. We are going to move on to the role play.
Oh, first we're gonna who's gonna be in the role play? So Gary Perry is the chair of the Energy Committee. So these are things that you want to know about before this is your research here. There's a an appreciation there and what his interests are. So Mary's going to be Gary and I'm going to be me. All right, Mary. Oh, excuse me. Get my hat on. So you guys will be the observer for this and see if you can see if we're using any of our communication skills, okay? And which ones we are, if you can identify some of those. I don't have a list of them to put in the chat, but
Or you can
um,
try to track where we are in the meeting.
yes, or that too. Okay. Hi, Representative Perry. Hey, thanks for making time for me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thanks for making the time to come to Helena.
How much time do you have for this meeting tonight?
Let's see, I've got about 10 minutes before I have to get to the floor.
Perfect. Great. Well, you may remember me from the Energy Open this summer. You convinced me to stay and play golf.
I remember you.
Ah, that was fun. That was a long day. Wow. I also want to thank you for your support letter that you wrote for our congressional delegation on the Energy Permitting Reform Act. We used that in our December meetings with them. And I also really like your idea of Montana Energy Plan. It shows like you want to see some vision to plan ahead, and since we're already seeing an increase in demand for energy, that's really important.
Yeah, well, thanks. I think an energy plan would help protect our traditional energy sector too.
Well, I'm here today because I learned that utilities around the country are spending a lot of their resources on smaller transmission projects that may not be needed instead of planning and coordinating their small projects to fit into regional projects. Um, and when they build unnecessary projects, that they're passing that extra cost down to consumers. So I'm asking that you include language in the Montana Energy Plan, HB 55, that would help expand the transmission grid in an efficient manner. Um, did you have a chance to look at the one pager I sent?
I glanced at it. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to read it closely.
Well, thanks for being open to discussing it with me. Was there anything that stood out or that you'd like me to do a quick overview of?
Yeah, could you say more about how utilities are building unnecessary transmission lines?
Sure. Well, that's definitely the crux of the matter. Most utilities have upped their distribution charges to about 25% of our bills. And our energy rates, as you know, are going up. So this may be due to our utility having an incentive to build capital projects like local transmission lines, but it doesn't have an incentive to see if those lines actually are needed. And plus, there isn't too much regional planning going on in the West to help them. What do you think about this idea?
A regional planning, yeah, I agree. We need more regional planning. But do you know if Northwestern is really doing this?
Well, that is a great question. I agree. I don't want to solve a problem that may not exist, right? So I'm not sure about whether Northwestern is because it's not easy to get that information. And that's what the bill might help with. Do you know who might be able to help us answer that question
I'm thinking we
now?
might get the Public Service Commission to check into it.
Okay, so you think they might have jurisdiction over that?
Yeah,
Is that
I
right?
do. Yeah.
Would anyone else know if they are
Well,
or if
it
Northwestern is?
could be in the integrated resource plan. I don't think legislators have the appetite for creating more bureaucracy, but I would like to see the Montana Energy Plan make planning more robust.
Well, it sounds like you care about being prepared and having integrity in how we plan for our future energy supply.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I guess you're right. I do.
Well, I'd love to hear more about your idea about the energy plan and if you could fit some of these ideas into it. Um, would you be willing to talk more later about this? Because I know it's getting close to time for you to head to the floor.
Yeah, I'd need more information about what's going on with Northwestern.
Would the legislative services know or be able to ask the PSC?
Yeah, I bet they would.
Also, would you like a link to a white paper on this topic?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to learn more about it.
And are there any people that or organizations you think would have concerns about it that we could research and
About
see
the
what their
amendment?
concerns are? Yeah, about the amendment.
Well, the electric co-ops and of course, Northwestern Energy.
Okay, thanks so much for your information. And I would love to hear more. I really feel like we covered, have some really good questions to answer from this. And I will be I'll try to approach the co-ops in Northwestern. And were you going to work with the legislative services or
Yeah,
anything?
I will. I'll contact them. Yeah.
Great. Can we keep in touch by email?
Uh, yeah, let's do that. This was quite interesting.
And could we have a quick photo together?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks, Representative Perry. Okay, that's the end. Thoughts, comments? How do you think the legislator felt? Was he bowled over too much?
It seemed like he had a lot of space to share his own thoughts and questions.
Okay.
That's what we like. Why the photo request? We can sometimes we sh share it on social media if they're okay with that.
It's optional.
On a federal level, it's it's nice.
We have a comment in the chat saying main problem for us would be convincing that some problem exists that they need to take the time for.
Yeah, we didn't get into that's a good point. I don't think I got the rationale out as much of like why this is so important. I know this is his bill, and so, and this is a tiny amount of time, but so he probably is concerned about transmission, so we already know that. Um, and but the convincing, yeah, I don't think there was enough, like this could really lower, make this right now is probably raising our electricity bills for everybody and for and industry and this really has to be taken care of because this is just another way that we're not getting access to this amazing energy that's on the grid that we just can't access.
So
Amazing cheap
what do you guys
energy.
think would be the rationale for him to support the amendment?
Can you go back to the slide that lists his values? Oh, I think you went too far.
This one?
There it is.
Or the one specific to the legislator.
Okay, sorry about that.
It doesn't really have too many values in there, but
Yeah. Well,
Or interests.
if he's a legislator, he theoretically is working for his constituents, and it's what is in the interest of his constituents in this regard.
well, Northwestern's a big constituent, so he's probably really
Yeah.
thinking about that.
So it's his constituents who have high electricity bills for at the expense of Northwestern profit. So you just have to see where he's going to come down on that.
Someone in the chat also suggested maybe exposing some over expenditure or missed opportunity for regional gains.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Good.
So it's fun to try to figure all that out. It was this is a little role play, so didn't get to really dig in maybe as much as to make it super fun. But
Okay. So any other takeaways from the training?
what worked, what didn't, what was a highlight,
What was confusing?
what was confusing?
What are you going to
Or other
remember?
questions.
What are you going to remember?
I wasn't able to spend a lot of time on it, but I did find that trying to do research on my legislators was not as easy as I thought it would be. In terms of finding where some of those common interests are, that you can build on.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I didn't spend a ton of time on it, but they seem a little protective, maybe, of that kind of personal information, which I can't blame them.
Yeah, and
Good.
this is kind of, this is new territory for us, the state level. With federal members of Congress, there's lots more information out there. It's different with state level legislators. So again, to think about it in a positive light, you get to be creative, but you also, might be starting with asking them in the meeting. I don't know. Um, you know, if there's not a lot of information out there, that makes it harder.
I would say also, Chelsea, that Catalyst Montana and Forward Montana both have a lot of resources on specific legislators. And so if you have specific questions, they might be able to answer them, or they might even have resources on their website.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah. I guess my only other reflection was just that Michael asked a really good question that had been, I've been wondering too, just about when you have legislators that are already aligned with you, how you can, what else you can do. And this really helped me think through, what are the other angles, whether it's trying to understand what is the rest of, the party, or, are there other, say, Democrats in the legislature that aren't so supportive, and how to lend support there to build more support, or whether it's more about thinking about building coalitions across the aisle. That there's always an angle, even if you have folks who are already kind of on board with your ask.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Please keep thinking about that if there's another highlight or something that you would like to know more about. And we'll be wrapping up. Um,
Oh, where do we go from here? Think about how a lot of you are already participating in advocacy. Um, if you're not working with a group, there's lots of groups out there, Families for Livable Climate, MEIC. You can attend Climate Advocacy Day on Friday, January 24th in Helena at the Capitol. And then if you're interested, maybe put something in the chat. If you are interested in a future session to have a a mock lobby meeting where you will role play one of these, being a legislator or a lobbyist. If there's interest, we will do a follow-up session in February. Yeah, and
thank you all for coming. And I'd love to know what you guys think about that, our methodology of being positive. Does that resonate, or does that you think, well, you really got to get your muscle into it, or did that sound?
I appreciate I believe that being positive and a motivational interviewing type approach is effective. I've seen that work in many settings. Sometimes it's pretty hard for me to remember that when things are really polarized and there's a lot of just BS coming from the other side. So I appreciate that reminder, and I do think that there are almost always places to find common ground, even now and in Montana, especially around renewable energy and the grid, because I think we know Republicans know that cheap power is good for industry, and that the cost plus incentive for the utilities will lead to unnecessary expenses that will be passed on to ratepayers unless there's real oversight. That's something that seems to get traction across the spectrum, is that it's just absurd that if the utility chooses a more expensive option, they make more money, and they get to pass that on to ratepayers. Unfortunately, it's really hard when the utility owns the Public Service Commission.
Yep. There's some wild cards on that though now. So Brad
Absolutely.
Molnar is a big Brad Molnar.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Michael, I struggle with that too, staying positive. So that's why I'm a member of CCL. Um, but it, I remind myself that a lot of what we see in the press or public statements is posturing, and it can be different when you meet with the legislator one-on-one. So, um, but yeah, it is hard.
well, so nice that you guys showed up. And Hope you feel more powerful, and we will send out, we have some good resources and especially on the CCL community website, we have some resources on motivational interviewing and different types of social science about talking to people and convincing people about things, which you can't do. You have to go with help them motivate them to change. But so
Yeah,
we'll send some of that
we'll
out.
send out a handout or Caitlin will with some of the slides that have all the techniques and the skills, so you'll have that. And thank you very much for joining us.
Have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you all. See you guys in Helena.
Yes.
Yep.
Good night.
See. There.
Oh, I thought that went really well, Kristen.
Yeah.
Kristen, we're going to have to do this again after all the time we spent
Hey,
on it.
you may want to turn off the recording.
Oh, yes, I do. Sorry. Oh, gosh. Okay. Uh,
Okay, did you
no, I
record?
haven't.